In the far western lands, beyond the dusty roads and quiet towns, there was a small settlement known as Red Creek. It was not a famous town, and it did not appear on most maps. Travelers sometimes stopped there to rest, drink water, and then continue their journey across the endless plains. The town had a small saloon, a blacksmith shop, a general store, and a tiny church made of old wood. Horses were tied outside buildings, and the sound of wind was more common than the sound of people. Not far from this town, about 2 miles away, there was a small wooden house near a river. The river was calm, clear, and surrounded by tall grass and a few large trees that provided shade during the hot summer days. This house belonged to a ranger named Ethan Cole. Ethan Cole was not an ordinary man. He was tall, strong, and quiet. He did not talk much, but when he spoke, people listened. He had worked as a ranger for many years, protecting small towns, guiding travelers through dangerous areas, and sometimes hunting down criminals and bandits who caused trouble in the region. People respected Ethan, but he lived alone. Every morning, Ethan woke up early before sunrise. He would step outside his house, breathe the cold morning air, and look at the river flowing slowly. Then he would feed his horse, whose name was Storm. Storm was a strong black horse and Ethan's only true companion. After feeding Storm, Ethan would make coffee on a small fire and sit quietly, watching the sun rise over the hills. His life was simple and quiet. He would sometimes ride to town, help the blacksmith carry heavy metal, help farmers fix fences, or escort travelers through the forest road where bandits sometimes attacked. The sheriff trusted Ethan more than anyone else, and many people believed that if Ethan was nearby, nothing bad would happen. But when evening came and the sun disappeared behind the hills, Ethan returned to his small house near the river, and the loneliness returned with him. He cooked his own food, fixed his own house, and sat alone outside at night looking at the stars. Sometimes he remembered his past, his family, and the life he once had long ago, before he became a ranger. But those days were gone, and Ethan had accepted his quiet and lonely life. One evening, the wind was stronger than usual. Dust moved across the land, and the sky was orange from the setting sun. Ethan had just returned from town after helping the sheriff transport a prisoner to the next county. He was tired, and Storm was tired too. Ethan removed the saddle from Storm and gently patted his neck. "You did well today, my friend," Ethan said quietly. Storm made a soft sound and lowered his head to eat grass. Ethan went inside his house and lit a small lamp. The house was simple: 1 bed, 1 table, 2 chairs, a small kitchen area, and a rifle hanging on the wall. There were not many things in the house, only what Ethan needed to survive. He cooked some beans and bread and ate slowly. After eating, he stepped outside again and sat on the wooden chair in front of his house. The river made a soft sound as the water moved over small stones. Ethan looked at the river and thought about life. He sometimes wondered if his life would always be like this, quiet, lonely, and always moving from one job to another. He had seen many towns, many people, many fights, and many dangerous situations, but he had never found a place where he truly belonged. The night became darker, and the stars filled the sky. Ethan stayed outside for a long time, just thinking and listening to the sound of nature. He did not know that his life was about to change very soon. The next morning, Ethan woke up early again, just like every day. He made coffee, fed Storm, and checked his rifle before starting his daily ride along the river and through the nearby forest. He always patrolled the area to make sure no bandits or criminals were hiding nearby. The land was quiet, and the only sounds were birds and the wind moving through the grass. As Ethan rode slowly along the river, he noticed something unusual in the distance near the water. At first, he thought it was a bag or maybe clothes left by travelers, but as he got closer, he realized it was something else. Someone was lying near the river. Ethan quickly rode closer and jumped off his horse. When he reached the riverbank, he saw that it was a young girl lying on the ground. Her clothes were dusty and torn in a few places, and her hands had small cuts and scratches. She looked very tired and weak, and she was unconscious. Ethan immediately checked if she was alive. He placed his hand near her face and felt her breathing. She was alive, but very weak. Ethan looked around carefully to make sure no one else was nearby. The area was quiet. Whoever she was, she had come here alone. He gently lifted her and carried her to his horse. Then he slowly rode back to his house near the river. When he reached his house, he carried her inside and placed
her on his bed. He brought water, cleaned the dirt and blood from her hands and face, and covered her with a blanket. The girl did not wake up that day. Ethan cooked soup and tried to give her a little water, but she was still unconscious. That night, Ethan did not sleep much. He sat on the chair near the bed, watching to make sure she was safe. The lonely ranger, who had lived alone for many years, now had someone in his house for the first time in a very long time. He did not know who she was, where she came from, or why she was near the river. But he knew one thing: he was going to help her. Outside, the river continued to flow quietly under the moonlight, and the wind moved through the trees. Ethan sat quietly in the small wooden house, waiting for the girl to wake up, not knowing that this moment would change his life forever.
The morning was quiet and cool, and a light fog floated above the river. The sun had just started to rise behind the hills, painting the sky in soft orange and yellow colors. Ethan Cole, the ranger, was riding his black horse slowly along the riverbank, just like he did almost every morning. He always checked the area to make sure there were no bandits, no lost travelers, and no trouble nearby. Storm, his horse, walked calmly, and the only sounds were the birds and the gentle flow of the river water. Everything looked peaceful, but Ethan had learned many years ago that the Wild West was never truly peaceful. Trouble could appear at any time. As Ethan rode along the river, he noticed something unusual in the distance. Near a group of rocks close to the water, something was lying on the ground. At first, he thought it might be a blanket, a bag, or maybe clothes left by travelers who had camped there during the night. But as he got closer, he realized it was not a bag. It was a person. Ethan quickly stopped his horse and jumped down. He walked carefully toward the riverbank, his hand close to his gun, just in case it was a trap. He looked around slowly, scanning the trees, the rocks, and the tall grass. The area was completely silent. No horses, no people, no movement. When he reached the riverbank, he saw that it was a young girl lying on the ground near the water. Her clothes were dusty and slightly torn, and her boots were covered in mud. Her hands had small cuts and scratches, and her hair was messy, as if she had been running for a long time through the forest and rough land. She was not moving. For a moment, Ethan thought she might be dead. He quickly knelt beside her and checked her breathing. After a few seconds, he felt a very weak breath. She was alive, but she was very weak and unconscious. Ethan looked around again carefully. He knew this was strange. A girl alone in the Wild West, injured and unconscious near a river, usually meant trouble. She could be running from someone, or someone could be nearby looking for her. But he could not leave her there. He gently lifted her and carried her toward his horse. She was very light, and it was clear she had not eaten properly for days. He slowly placed her on the horse and then climbed up behind her, holding her so she would not fall. Then Ethan turned Storm toward his house near the river and rode slowly back. The ride back to the house felt longer than usual. Ethan kept looking around to make sure no one was following them. The wind moved through the tall grass, and the sky was now bright as the sun rose higher. When Ethan reached his small wooden house, he carefully carried the girl inside and placed her on his bed. He brought a bucket of clean water and a cloth. He gently cleaned the dirt and blood from her hands and face. Some of the cuts were deep, but most were small scratches from branches and rocks. After cleaning her wounds, he covered her with a blanket and placed a small pillow under her head. Then he made some warm soup and tried to give her a little water by slowly lifting her head. She did not wake up, but she swallowed a little water. The whole day passed, and she did not wake up. Ethan stayed near the house that day instead of going to town. He repaired a broken fence, fed Storm, and checked the area around the house many times to make sure no one was coming. Something about the situation made him feel that this was not just a normal accident. At night, Ethan lit a lamp and sat on the chair near the bed. The girl was still unconscious, breathing slowly and quietly. The house was silent except for the sound of the river outside and the occasional sound of wind hitting the wooden walls. Ethan had lived alone for many years, and the house had always been quiet, but now the silence felt different. There was someone else in the house, someone he did not know, someone who had appeared suddenly near the river like a mystery. Late at night, the girl finally moved slightly. Ethan immediately stood up and went near the bed. Her eyes opened slowly, and she looked around, confused and scared. "You're safe," Ethan said in a calm voice. "You're in my house near Red Creek. I found you by the river." She tried to sit up, but she was too weak. Ethan ate for some water, and she drank slowly. She looked at Ethan for a long moment, trying to understand who he was and where she was. "My name is Ethan," he said. "I'm a ranger. I found you by the river this morning." She stayed quiet for a moment and then spoke very softly. "My name is Lily," she said. She tried to remember how she got there, but she was very tired. Ethan told her she should rest and that she was safe here. He gave her some soup, and after eating a little, she fell asleep again. Ethan went outside and stood near the river, looking at the moon reflecting on the water. He knew his life had just changed, but he did not yet know how much. Inside the small house, the girl named Lily slept peacefully, safe for the first time in many days, while the lonely ranger stood outside under the stars, thinking about the strange day when he found a girl by the river who came into his life like a mystery from the Wild West. Section 3. The Ranger Takes Her Home. The morning sun was now higher in the sky, and the river sparkled under the light. Ethan stood beside his horse, looking at the unconscious girl he had found near the river. He knew he could not leave her there. The Wild West was not a safe place, especially for someone who was injured and alone. Ethan carefully lifted the girl from the ground. She was very light, and it was clear she had not eaten properly for many days. Her hands were scratched, and her clothes were dusty from traveling across rough land. Whoever she was, she had been through a difficult journey. He slowly carried her to his horse, Storm. Storm stood calmly as Ethan gently placed the girl across the saddle. Ethan then climbed onto the horse behind her, holding her carefully so she would not fall during the ride. The ride back to Ethan's house was slow and careful. Ethan did not want to hurt her more. The wind moved through the tall grass, and birds flew across the sky. Everything looked peaceful, but Ethan's mind was full of questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why was she alone near the river? Was someone looking for her? Ethan kept looking around while riding, making sure no one was following them. In the Wild West, it was dangerous to trust strangers, but Ethan was not the kind of man who left someone to die. After some time, Ethan finally reached his small wooden house near the river. He stopped Storm, climbed down, and carefully carried the girl inside the house. He placed her on his bed and brought clean water and cloth to clean her wounds again. He cleaned the dirt from her face and hands, and noticed she had more small injuries on her arms, probably from running through trees and bushes. After cleaning the wounds, he covered her with a blanket so she could rest. Ethan then went outside, removed the saddle from Storm, and gave him water and food. While Storm ate, Ethan stood quietly and looked toward the open land. He had a feeling that this girl's story was not simple, and that trouble might come sooner or later. After finishing his work outside, Ethan went back inside the house. The girl was still sleeping. He cooked some soup and made fresh water ready for when she woke up. The house felt different now. For many years, Ethan had lived alone in silence. Now there was someone else in the house, even if she was unconscious and quiet. The empty house did not feel so empty anymore. As evening came, the orange light of the sunset entered through the small window of the house. Ethan sat on the chair near the bed, cleaning his rifle, and occasionally looking at the girl to make sure she was okay. Late in the evening, the girl slowly opened her eyes. She looked confused and scared. She tried to move, but she was weak. "You're safe," Ethan said calmly. "Don't try to move too much. You were injured near the river. I brought you to my house." She looked around the small wooden house and then looked at Ethan again. She was still scared, but Ethan's calm voice made her feel a little safer. He gave her some water, and she drank slowly. Then he gave her a little soup. She ate slowly, still weak, but now awake. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You're welcome," Ethan replied. "You can rest here until you are strong again." She did not say much more that night. She was too tired and soon fell asleep again. Ethan placed another blanket over her and then went outside. The night was quiet, and the moon reflected on the river water. Ethan stood outside his house, thinking about how one morning near the river had changed his life. He did not know who the girl really was, or what problem she might bring. But one thing was certain, his lonely life was no longer the same. Section 4. Recovery and Truth. The morning sunlight slowly filled the small wooden house as the new day began. The river outside flowed gently, and the air was calm and fresh. Inside the house, Lily was lying on the bed, her breathing steady and peaceful. For the first time in many days, she was truly safe. Ethan woke up early as usual. He stepped outside, fed his horse Storm, and looked across the land. Everything seemed quiet, but he still remained careful. His instincts as a ranger told him that something about this situation was not simple. After finishing his morning routine, Ethan went back inside the house. Lily was awake. She slowly sat up, still weak, but much better than before. Her eyes moved around the room, taking in every detail: the wooden walls, the small table, the rifle hanging on the wall, and the man who had saved her life. "You're feeling better?" Ethan said calmly. "Yes, a little," Lily replied softly. Ethan brought her some water and fresh food. This time she was able to eat properly.
Her hands were still slightly shaking, but she was gaining strength. For a few moments, there was silence. Then Ethan spoke, his voice calm but serious. "Who are you, Lily, and why were you alone near the river?" Lily looked down at her hands. She stayed quiet for a moment, as if thinking whether she should tell the truth or not. Finally, she spoke. "My family, they are not good people," she said slowly. "They are outlaws. They rob trains, banks, and sometimes they hurt people." Ethan listened carefully without interrupting. "I didn't want that life," she continued. "I didn't want to be part of it, so I ran away." Her voice became softer. "They chased me. I kept running for days. I didn't stop. I didn't know where to go. I just wanted to be free." Ethan understood now. The cuts on her hands, the dust on her clothes, her weakness, it all made sense. She had been running for her life. "They will come looking for you," Ethan said quietly. Lily nodded slowly. Fear appeared in her eyes. "Yes, they will." The room became silent again. Outside, the wind moved through the trees near the river. Ethan stood up and walked to the window, looking outside for a moment. Then he turned back toward Lily. "You're safe here," he said firmly. "No one will hurt you while you are here." Lily looked at him, surprised. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, with calm strength and certainty. Days passed, and Lily slowly recovered. She started helping Ethan around the house. At first, it was small things: cleaning, preparing food, organizing supplies. Then she began to do more as her strength returned. Ethan repaired parts of the house, fixed the fence, and continued his daily patrols. But now he always returned quickly. He did not want to leave Lily alone for too long. The house that was once silent now had life in it. Sometimes they talked while cooking. Sometimes they sat outside in the evening, watching the sunset over the river. Lily began to smile more, and Ethan, who had been serious and quiet for many years, started to feel something new: peace. One evening, they were sitting outside as the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills. "It's beautiful here," Lily said softly, looking at the river. Ethan nodded. "It's quiet. That's why I stayed." Lily looked at him. "Weren't you ever lonely?" Ethan paused for a moment. Then he answered honestly, "Yes." There was silence again, but this time it was not uncomfortable. Lily smiled slightly. "You're not alone anymore." Ethan looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled too. But deep inside, both of them knew something. This peace would not last forever. Somewhere out there, her family was searching, and sooner or later, they would find her.
The Outlaws arrive. The days passed quietly near the river, and for a short time, Ethan and Lily lived a peaceful life. Lily had almost fully recovered now. She helped with cooking, cleaning, and sometimes even fed Storm, while Ethan repaired fences or worked around the house. But deep inside, Lily was always worried. Every time she heard a distant horse, every time the wind made a strange sound at night, she felt afraid. She knew her family would not stop looking for her. One afternoon, the sky was bright and the wind was strong, moving dust across the open land. Ethan was outside fixing a wooden fence near the house, while Lily was inside preparing food. Suddenly, Ethan stopped working. He saw something far away in the distance, dust rising into the air. In the Wild West, rising dust usually meant only one thing: riders were coming. Ethan stood still and watched carefully. The dust cloud became bigger, and soon he could see horses and riders moving fast toward the house. Ethan immediately knew this was trouble. He walked quickly into the house. "Lily," he said in a serious voice, "riders are coming." Lily froze. Her face turned pale, and fear filled her eyes. "How many?" she asked quietly. Ethan looked outside again. 5, maybe 6. Lily looked down and whispered, "It's them, my family." The house suddenly felt very quiet. The wind outside became louder, and the sound of horses slowly came closer. Ethan walked to the wall, took his rifle, and checked the bullets. Then he looked at Lily. "Go inside the back room and lock the door," he said calmly. "Stay there until I come for you." Lily shook her head. "They are dangerous. They will kill you." Ethan looked at her calmly. "They will have to try." The sound of horses became louder and louder until finally the riders stopped in front of the house.
Dust moved through the air as the horses stepped on the dry ground. 5 men got down from their horses. They were armed with guns and looked rough and dangerous. One of them, an older man with a beard and a black hat, stepped forward. He was Lily's father. He shouted loudly, "We know she's here, bring her out." Ethan walked outside slowly and stood in front of the house. He was calm and not afraid. "She's not going anywhere," Ethan said. The men looked at each other and laughed. The older man stepped forward again. "She belongs to our family, she ran away, and no one runs away from our family." Ethan stood still. The wind moved his coat slightly, and the sun shone behind him. "She's under my protection now," Ethan said quietly. The men became serious. One of them slowly moved his hand toward his gun. "You don't want this fight, Ranger," the older man said. Ethan replied, "You should leave." For a few seconds no one moved. The wind blew dust across the ground, and the horses made quiet sounds behind the men. The tension in the air was heavy. Everyone knew what was about to happen. The older man finally spoke again, his voice cold and angry. "If you don't move, you die with her." Ethan did not move. His hand slowly moved closer to his gun. The Wild West was quiet for one last moment before the fight that would change everything.
Section 6. The Gunfight. The wind blew dust across the dry ground as Ethan stood in front of his small wooden house. The 5 outlaws stood facing him, their horses behind them, their hands slowly moving closer to their guns. The air was silent and heavy, like the world itself was waiting for what would happen next. Inside the house, Lily stood in the back room, her heart beating fast. She knew her family would not leave peacefully. She also knew Ethan would not step aside. The fight was unavoidable now. Outside, Ethan's eyes moved from one outlaw to another. He watched their hands, their feet, their eyes. Years of being a ranger had taught him that gunfights were not about anger. They were about timing, speed, and calm thinking. The leader, Lily's father, stepped forward slightly. His face was serious and cold. "This is your last chance, Ranger," he said. "Move away from the house." Ethan replied calmly, "Leave, all of you. This is your last chance." For a moment, no one moved. Then suddenly, one of the outlaws pulled his gun. But Ethan was faster. A loud gunshot broke the silence of the Wild West. Birds flew out of the trees and horses moved nervously. The first outlaw fell to the ground before he could even fire properly. Immediately, the others pulled their guns and started shooting. Bullets hit the wooden walls of the house, breaking wood and glass. Ethan quickly moved to the side and took cover behind a wooden fence. He fired again. Another outlaw fell from behind his horse. The gunfight became loud and chaotic. Smoke from gunfire filled the air, and the sound of bullets echoed across the land. Horses ran away in fear as the fight continued. One outlaw tried to move around the side of the house to attack Ethan from behind, but Ethan saw his shadow moving along the wall. Ethan quickly turned and fired before the man could shoot. Inside the house, Lily could hear every gunshot. She covered her ears and closed her eyes, praying that Ethan would survive. Outside, only 2 outlaws were left now, including Lily's father. They hid behind a large rock and fired toward Ethan's position. A bullet hit the wooden fence very close to Ethan, breaking a piece of wood near his shoulder. Ethan took a deep breath and stayed calm. He waited. He knew they would have to move eventually. After a few moments, one of the outlaws tried to run toward the horses to escape. Ethan quickly aimed and fired. The man fell before reaching the horse. Now only Lily's father remained. The older man stood slowly from behind the rock, holding his gun. He looked angry, but also tired. "You chose the wrong side, Ranger," he said loudly. Ethan replied, "She chose her own life." The older man raised his gun. At the same moment, Ethan fired. The final gunshot echoed across the land, and then everything became silent. The wind blew slowly again, moving dust across the ground. The fight was over. Ethan stood still for a moment, breathing heavily. His arm was slightly injured from a bullet that had grazed him, but he was alive. After a few seconds, the back door of the house opened and Lily ran outside. She looked around and saw that the fight was over. She ran to Ethan. "You're hurt," she said, seeing the blood on his arm. "It's nothing," Ethan replied quietly. "It's over now." Lily looked around one more time, then looked back at Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. "You saved my life," she said softly. Ethan looked at the quiet land around them, then at the river in the distance. "It looks like you saved mine too," he said. The wind moved through the trees near the river as the sun slowly began to set.
The Wild West became quiet again, but this time, everything had changed forever.